Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at this massive, invisible tug-of-war that dictates how we interact every single day. It's the friction between the messy, completely unfiltered reality of human nature and the strict moral rules we're all taught from the time we're kids. We call it the honesty paradox. So let's jump right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this core question. If humans naturally lie, why does education insist on teaching us honesty? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, right? But honestly, it's a profound puzzle. It cuts right to the absolute core of how our society operates, how we raise our kids, and honestly, how we justify our own daily behaviors.
Well, to really unpack this whole paradox, we first have to take a hard, totally unfiltered look at actual human behavior. Like, why exactly do humans lie? We kind of tend to treat lying like it's a glitch in the system, like a moral failing or just a temporary lapse in judgment. But if we're being honest with ourselves, and yeah, pun definitely intended there, the reality is so much more complex than just a simple moral failing.
There are basically four main reasons we bend the truth, and they act a lot like a survival multi-tool. First off, we use it as a shield to protect ourselves, whether we're trying to escape punishment or just completely dodge an uncomfortable conflict. Second, we use it to protect others. We usually soften this by calling them white lies, like, telling your aunt you absolutely love her terrible dry fruitcake. Third, we do it to gain tangible benefits, things like power, money, or better relationships. And fourth, to maintain social functioning. Think about everyday politeness, diplomacy, or just saving face. Lying isn't some accidental mistake. It is a highly practical, incredibly versatile tool that we literally use every single day for self-preservation and social lubrication.
Now, what's truly fascinating here is how evolutionary biology completely reframes this whole concept. It defines lying not as a sin, but as an actual evolutionary capability. Throughout human history, deception wasn't a bug in our programming, it was a deeply ingrained survival skill. In fact, evolutionary biologists and linguists suggest it developed right alongside our human language abilities. As we evolved the capacity to communicate really complex thoughts, we simultaneously evolved the capacity to deceive. It's just a fundamental part of the human toolkit.
But wait, that brings us to a massive roadblock. If lying is so incredibly natural, so deeply wired into our evolution, why on earth do we fight it so fiercely? Why do parents, teachers, and institutions spend literally years drilling the concept of do not lie into our heads from the very moment we can speak? Well, it all comes down to a genuinely terrifying concept, the cost of a collapsed foundation of trust.
Just imagine the absolute nightmare scenario, a society where lying is simply accepted as the default. Without a baseline of trust, literally everything we rely on breaks down. Cooperation between strangers? Nearly impossible. Laws? They fail completely because the entire justice system fundamentally relies on the truth to function. Families would break apart under the weight of constant suspicion. The cost of everyday transactions, whether you're doing global business or just buying a cup of coffee, would skyrocket because you'd have to verify absolutely every single detail. Ultimately, people would be stuck in an exhausting, constant state of defense. Without trust, society just simply collapses.
So, here is the crucial point to understand. On one side, we have our raw biological reality, basically our DNA, telling us that humans naturally lie. On the other side, we have our educational mandate, our moral books, telling us to never lie. At first glance, these two ideas seem completely 100% contradictory, but actually they aren't. Because one describes the raw biological reality of what humans currently are, while the other establishes a social ideal of what humans should become.
Which brings up a kind of spicy, controversial question. Is education itself lying to us? If our schools, our parents, and our societal rules are teaching us a version of reality that doesn't actually match our human nature, are our educational systems technically deceiving us right from the start?
Well, in a way, yeah. Think about the absolute slogans we are taught as kids. We're told, good people never lie. But we all know as experienced adults that this just isn't strictly true. Good people tell white lies to spare feelings all the time, because telling your boss what you really think of their new haircut isn't just rude, it's literal career suicide. Good people lie to protect the innocent, but education takes incredibly complex, messy human nature and packages it up into these highly simplified absolute slogans.
Or, take another classic absolute. Hard work always brings success. Again, any adult who has lived in the real world knows it's way more nuanced than this. Luck, timing, health, your starting resources, they all play massive roles in success. This absolute educational slogan doesn't perfectly match the nuanced and honestly sometimes unfair reality of the world. So why do we keep teaching it?
Because this simplification actually builds a totally necessary framework for young minds. Education simplifies reality for three crucial reasons. Number one, kids need simple, clear rules to build their baseline values. Nuance just confuses a blank slate. Number two, society requires common moral defaults just to function smoothly. We need everyone starting from the exact same playbook. And number three, the complete, complex, unfiltered truth is simply way too heavy and overwhelming for early psychological development. So these absolute slogans aren't malicious lies at all. They are necessary developmental scaffolding.
Here is the philosophical punchline. Order precedes complexity. Before you can even begin to understand the nuanced exceptions of the world, before you can safely navigate all those tricky gray areas, you must first establish a basic, rigid order. You have to lay down the solid brick foundation of a house before you can start debating the complex interior decoration, right?
Think about something we see every single day. Traffic lights. We teach kids an absolute rule. Red means stop, green means go. Boom. No exceptions. But on the other side of the equation is the complex adult reality. Sometimes running a red light might actually be more efficient. Say you're in a severe medical emergency at 3 a.m. and there are absolutely no other cars around. But we absolutely must teach the rigid rule first. If we tried teaching the complex exception to a 5-year-old, the result on our roads would just be pure chaos.
And this brings us right to the grand resolution of our core paradox today. Moving from a tangled mess of reality to a clear moral compass, we realize that education isn't actually designed to describe raw reality. It's not always about telling the truth regarding human nature. Instead, its primary, essential function is shaping the direction. It is pointing humanity toward the collective ideal that allows us to survive and thrive together as a community.
And that is exactly where the mature perspective comes in. As we grow from kids who follow absolute rules into mature adults, our actual task is to learn how to safely navigate life's complex gray areas. We realize that yes, honesty is incredibly vital, but it isn't a mechanical absolute. We understand that while lies can be deeply destructive, they can also sometimes act as necessary social lubricants. We see super clearly that morality is almost never purely black and white, and most importantly, we accept that there is and always will be a persistent gap between raw human nature and the strict rules we set for ourselves.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. I really want you to slow down for a second and just think about this gap. Think about the bridge over that chasm. It's the distance between the messy, survival-driven reality of who we inherently are and the beautiful, structured, moral ideal of who we are trying so hard to be. Real and right are not always the exact same thing. It is a profound and honestly somewhat humbling realization. What is factually true about our biological human nature is not always what is morally right for human society to flourish. And maybe that tension, that constant daily struggle between our natural instincts and our taught ideals is exactly what makes us uniquely human. So, next time you catch yourself telling a polite white lie, ask yourself, are you abandoning the rules, or are you just navigating that really delicate space between the real and the right? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.